Hello everybody, and welcome to my first attempt at doing an 8-bit wars video. That's based on the series over at Retro Asylum, done by Andy. Today I'm going to be looking at Outrun, which was originally released back in the arcades in 1986 by Sega. If you haven't heard of this game before, where have you been? You must have been hiding. Yeah, obviously you must have been hiding under a rock for the past 26 years. It is a classic arcade game, released in the year that I was born. But yeah, it's a classic arcade game whereby you play as a you drive a Ferrari Testarossa with your blonde girlfriend across a series of stages. Basically, it's a race against the clock. You have to get to the end before your time runs out. And at the end of each stage, you pass through a checkpoint to get more time. And there's you have to go through 5 stages. There's about 24, 25 in all. No, it's 15. Yeah, there's 15 stages all in all. And basically at the end of each stage, the road splits into 2, and you can actually go left to right, and you can actually choose your routes to get to the end, which was a really cool idea. Yeah, especially at the time. Yeah, not many arcade games gave you that sort of freedom. But yeah, it's a great game, guys. It really is, an absolute classic. Now, of course, everybody can wait for it to be converted to the home computers. It was released on, it was converted to a variety of systems. US Gold published the UK home computer versions. Yes, our lovely friends at US Gold. So, and honestly, in what way could they trash our beloved Outrun? Well, to be fair, they trashed it in a lot of ways, really. Really, with a lot of the conversions. To be fair, guys, none of the conversions I'm looking at are perfect. There's one conversion that's just complete crap. But there's one that really tried too hard to be like the arcade game, and the machine struggled. The machine it was on really struggled with it. And there was actually one whereby they actually had to produce a watered down version of the game to suit the system. And overall, it's a great game. There are obviously differences between the versions. There's actually one version which has fixed routes. Well, I won't tell you which one it is. I'll explain later. But yeah, anyway, that's the arcade version. This is the ZX Spectrum version. Now, the Spectrum version does actually have a loading screen on the tape version, but not on the disc version for some reason. This is I'm of course playing the disc version for reasons I will explain later. Anyway, here's the ZX Spectrum version. Now, take note at the start, you can actually hear the 3, 2, 1, go sort of like beeps. Now, the Spectrum. Now, obviously in the arcade version, you had lights and the beeps going. Well, it is. Yeah, well, it goes like. There's actually this version just does the sound beeps on the 128K version anyway. I don't think it does it on the 48K one. There's a lot. The 128K version is not much different from the 48K, but it is overall better because you get the music in the background as well. But there's one version whereby it doesn't have either the 3, 2, 1 go or the lights. It just your car just it's just stationary at first, and then all of a sudden you go. And there's one version which actually has both. But yeah, anyway, this is I said before, this is the Spectrum version. Right. Well, first thing you notice is the graphics. It's, as with most Spectrum games, it's monochrome. But this one does actually have a bit of colour. You got a bit of colour for the sky and things, but the actual playing area is just 2 colours. So the colour changes from from stage to stage. I mean, obviously the first stage it's green. One stage will be lit yellow, and one stage where you got magenta as well. But yeah, the problem. I mean, graphically the game looks really quite detailed. I mean, the car sprite really does look great. Great as all the other sprites and things. The road is not very well defined. Unfortunately, the road is not very well defined. And as you will have noticed, ages ago when I started the video, it's running at a snail's pace. It's one of the slowest games I've ever played on the Spectrum. It's really, yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, okay, in an emulator you can, yeah, in most emulators you can increase the speed of the emulation and whatnot. But yeah, we're talking about back in the day, you know, when you got this for your Spectrum, this would be the speed you would have to play at, and it's just absolutely awful. And this bit's really badly programmed as well. See, like there's a car off the track there. It's very glitchy. The splits in the roads. It's really badly programmed. And in fact, the three of those the checkpoint there. I think some of the poles actually end up on the road. Now, of course, you may notice that it paused a little bit there. That's because it's loading up the next course from the disc. Yes, now, unfortunately, of course, back in the day, as with a lot of games for the 8-bit computers, particularly for the Commodore 64, the Spectrum, and the Amstrad CPC, often you'd have the game come out on cassette and disc. Some games only came out on disc, some games only came out on cassette, but a lot of them, quite a few of them actually came out on both. And this was one touch game that came out on both formats for all three systems. The problem is with the Spectrum disc version is that you can only use the disc version if you had the Spectrum Plus 3, because it came on 3-inch disc, and the only Spectrum that had a disc drive that allowed to use such a disc drive was the Plus 3, because it had one built in. Other Spectrum owners of other Spectrum models had to use the tape version, and seriously, honestly, guys, tape loading in this game is a nightmare. It's not the worst loader system I've ever used. I mean that can't go to Street Fighter 2. That is absolutely god awful. But I mean this one is pretty bad, really, especially on a 48K system. Now that's another glitch there. I crashed into nothing. Yeah, it's not very well programmed. The road splits are not very. It's very glitchy, this game, if you ask me. Slow and glitchy. That's how to describe this one. But yeah, but yeah, tape loading on this game is a nightmare, and because you have to literally just stop and start the tape, every couple of minutes. And and one thing I forgot to mention is this stage. Look how slow it's running. I mean, look, this is pathetic. Come on, do you want to know why it's running slow? Once again, it's because the graphics are far too detailed. The road objects have got so much detail in them that the poor old Spectrum can't cope. I mean, for God's sake, compromise. That's one thing I want to say to the programmer. Make some proper compromises. Make the graphics look really simple. Don't make them look you try the game. The problem with this version is that it's trying too hard to be like the arcade game, and it's just not. And the Spectrum just can't cope. And as a result, you end up with a game that's barely playable. But yeah, slow is how I describe this. Slow and glitchy. Anyway, back to the tape loading mess. Basically, on a 48K system, you had to load in each course no matter what, and when it's game over, you had to rewind the tape and then reload all the tracks and whatnot. And it was a nightmare because you were doing it every 2-3 minutes. Although, except for the case of this stage, I actually calculated this stage takes 5 minutes to finish, and yet you're only supposed to be given about a minute or so time because it runs so slowly. It's terrible. It's just appalling. The speed the game runs at. It's just awful. If Chase HQ can do it, then so could Outrun. But unfortunately, the programmer really messed up here. It's not very well programmed, this one. But the tape loading is a nightmare. On a 128K system, at least it will actually remember all the courses that you've loaded in, but you still have to load them in one at a time as the game loads. So I don't know why they couldn't discount the idea of loading the game all in one load, like what they did with games like Chase HQ and things. I mean, big mistake there. But at least the reason why this is not as bad as Street Fighter 2 is because at least on this one, it has the decency to tell you what it wants and what it's like and what it's found. So you can easily note down, if you've got access to a tape deck with a counter on, you can note down the numbers at which each course starts. Whereas on Street Fighter 2, it doesn't tell you anything. You just have to leave the tape running until the end of the side, and then turn the tape over and play it. Play the other side, and you had like 45 minutes loading. It was a really bad loading system. It was terrible. But this one was pretty awkward. And another thing as well is that on the tape version, the game, once it's loaded up the course, it just starts straight away. There's no stop the tape message or anything. The game just starts, and it gives you no time to lean over and stop the tape. So on disc it's a bit better, but on tape it's a nightmare. And there is actually one other version that uses the same loading system, and of course there's one other version whereby the courses are actually separate. And anyways, I just flip the disc over. Anyway, there's the next course. But yeah, and another thing as well, so I find the cars in this one are much more irritating than they are in the arcade version. A lot of them just switch lanes right at the last minute and they end up crashing into you, which is bad. It's really bad. If you ask me, it's a really dodgy bit of programming, that. But yeah, this isn't honestly, guys, this is a really not a great conversion. But none of them are perfect, really. But yeah, I mean, there was actually one version whereby at least it was fun to play, but it wasn't very accurate to the arcade version. I'll explain that version when I come to it. And of course, one thing I've got to tell you guys is the crashes as well. On the arcade version, there's your car can either spin out, or you can do a roll if you end up crashing into an object at too fast a speed. But in this one, the only crash you got is the spinning around. And there's one version where your car just stops no matter what, and that's it, or it slows down, and that's it. And then there's one version whereby your car stops, but does a bit more of a spectacular bump, and has the car flip. But anyway, guys, this is not a great version. It's far too slow to be enjoyable, really. It's a bit better on disc because of the loading, but most people would have, who've obviously played the tape version. It's a nightmare to play. It's just very slow. It's trying far too hard to be like the arcade game, this one. Anyway, that's enough of this version. Let's move on to the Amstrad one. Now, unlike the Spectrum disc version, this one does actually have the loading screen. It looks pretty nice. Now, of course, the music you hear is obviously Splash Wave. It's quite a faithful rendition of the theme tune, the Splash Wave tune from the arcade. To be fair, the music in the Spectrum one was very good as well. I forgot to mention that. And the sound effects are pretty minimal. But yeah, this is the only time in the Amstrad version that you actually hear any music. So that says a lot about this conversion. Anyway, let's just sort out my controls, select the joystick, and start the game. Now, of course, like the Spectrum version, this one does actually load in each course separately, and so therefore it suffers from the same loading problems when playing from tape. Right. Now, of course, this is the version whereby there's absolutely there's no lights or beeps or anything like that to indicate the start. And in terms of sound, here is the sound in this game. No joke, that is all you get, and it should be coming to crash any second. It's honestly, guys, the sound in this is horrible. I mean, come on, look at what the Spectrum did, and look what they did with the Amstrad. It's terrible. And there's a crash. Yeah, that's what the crashes are like in the Amstrad version. It's appalling. It's shocking, bloody awful. Whoever did the sound there should be shot. It's absolutely bloody. It's a bloody mess, if you ask me. It's atrocious. There's no effort put into it whatsoever. From after hearing what the Spectrum version was capable of doing, this is you know, I'm really cross actually. Yeah, considering how much they crapped over Amstrad owners. I mean, this is awful. It's overall, guys, it's a crap conversion. I think they mostly just copied the code from the Spectrum, because as you can see, it's not running any faster at all. It's running at exactly the same speed. I mean, I suppose they have prettied up the graphics. It's not monochrome, so give them that. So, I mean, graphically, it's not a bad game, but I mean, it's just so. It's really, but I mean, it's pathetically slow. There's no sound, no music, no absolute crap sound effects. Some of the worst sound effects I've ever heard in the game. This has got to be one of the worst conversions of any game I've played. It is absolutely awful, and of course, it suffers from the same tape loading problems as the Spectrum one. And quite frankly, guys, it's awful. It's an awful conversion. I wouldn't say it's as glitchy as the Spectrum one, but it's crap. I mean, to be fair, guys, I did actually enjoy the Spectrum one more than this one. But I mean, it's no faster at all. In a way, it's awful. It's really bad, this conversion. To be fair, like I said, the Spectrum version wasn't much cop anyway. But like I said earlier before, none of the conversions are perfect. In fact, this is the conversion that's bloody awful. The Spectrum one's not much better either. But yeah, it's. I mean, this is appalling. I mean, like I said, there's no crashes at all. Your car just stops and it just does a little sound. How lame can you get? This is appalling. And I mean, you heard the music in the Spectrum one. Why is there no music in this one? I'm actually emulating this on a 128K Amstrad, so they could have easily put the music in, but no, they decided not to with this version for some strange reason. Even though the Amstrad CPC used the same sound chip as in the Spectrum 128K, so I honestly, guys, why I decided to reduce the quality of the sound effects. I mean, the sound in the Spectrum one, it was reasonable. You heard your crashes and stuff, but they were much better than on this version. And yet, like I said, the Spectrum 128 used the same sound chip as the Amstrad CPC, and yet the Amstrad CPC version has no music and sounds crap. Why can't they just use the sound code from the Spectrum one? Why is it worse than the Spectrum? It's got no reason to be worse. So can someone explain why the sound is really crap and the Spectrum one sounds really good, even though they use the same sound chip? It's crap, guys. Seriously, I cannot express how awful this conversion is. It's just terrible. And like I said, it suffers from a lot of the same problems that the Spectrum had. It's still pretty. It's not as glitchy, but it's still pretty glitchy. I mean, that lorry sort of almost flashed there to the side of the track. It's still very slow and glitchy, and no effort has gone into it whatsoever. It's an appalling conversion, really. It's one of the worst conversions ever. I mean, I'd say this is probably just as bad as the. I mean, I suppose in a way, actually, to be fair, this is probably one of the worst 8-bit conversions I've played, but I wouldn't say it's the worst conversion I've ever played. I mean, Outrun on the Amiga is probably worse than this. I mean, okay, that ran a bit faster, but that was still had poor frame rate, and your graphics on that were awful. Whereas in this one, the graphics, are pretty good. Oh, pretty good. I have to give it to that. Give the programmers that. At least they did put some effort into the graphics, and it didn't just look like a straight Spectrum port. But I suppose in a way this bit is slightly faster, but it's still too slow. It's still jerky and horrible. They made it, to be fair, guys. They really, once again, I think this is a case of I mean, this is a case of them. I think this is a case of it trying too hard to be like the arcade game again, but only worse. Only less effort's been put into this one, and it's just a horrible mess. I hope someday that some homebrew coder will do a version of that one, like what some guys recently did with R-Type, because the Amstrad version of that was horrendous. because that being literally more of a Spectrum port than this one was. It even had the same graphics and everything. Well, I say that I've never actually played it, but I have heard it, and I've seen the Amstrad version, the original, but the new one looks really good and really impressive. I'll have to give that one. I'll have to put it plays on that one, I think. But yeah, this is a crap conversion, guys. Seriously, you know what, guys? I've had enough of this version. Let's take the Commodore 64 version. Now, as you can see here, it does actually use a different loading screen, but yeah, it's not as good as the other ones really. But yeah, it's an accurately drawn representation of the Outrun logo. Anyway, this is where it all went wrong for me, where it really disappointed most people. You have to pick which course. Yes, this is the only conversion of Outrun I played that has fixed routes. So, but at least it didn't have. At least this didn't mean that it had the awful multi-loading of the other versions. But I mean, yeah. Cause I mean, but basically, as usual with the other versions, I'm playing the disc version. On the cassette version, you'd have 5 programs on the tape. Whereas the disc version, you put your disc in and it comes up with a menu like it did at the start there. Right, now this is the Commodore 64 version. Oh my god! Look how fast this is running compared to the other 2 versions. This is great! This is much more like it. I mean, look at the sheer speed of it. It's really fast. The speed of the game is really impressive. This really does, really crap all over the Spectrum and Amstrad versions. Really, guys, in terms of the speed, and it's, I just can't believe it. Obviously, the graphics are not nowhere near as detailed. They're really low res. I mean, there's your houses. There you go. They're not very well detailed, but I suppose in a way it does help make the game run really fast. So once, and I think I think I did mention this earlier in the video. There's I said there was 1 or 2 versions whereby they were trying. There's one version whereby it was trying too hard to be like the arcade game. That was the Spectrum version, and there was one version that was just complete crap. That was the Amstrad one. This is the one where they've made compromises. I mean, this is the tunnel scene. Remember the tunnel stage? Remember on the Spectrum version, this ran really slow. No slowdown here at all. And look at it, it's running mega fast. I mean, the speed of this is impressive. Hands up to the programs. And there's the car flip. The other 2 versions didn't have that. This version also has one where you can't just stop, but it makes a much more spectacular sound than the Amstrad version never did. It was remember the Amstrad version was just like whereas the Commodore 64 one is like and you can see a car bumping, and you can see your now brunette girlfriend. Yes, she's a brunette in this version. She turns around and I think she sort of like tells you off. But yeah, it's but to tell you the truth, guys, actually there's one thing I did get to mention. I can't remember if the other 2 versions did have endings like the arcade version. I think I did get to the end of the Spectrum version once, but it was a long time ago. I can't remember what happened. I think your car just stops and slid to the side of the road. Slid, if you know what I mean. And I've never finished the Amstrad version, but to be fair, I don't really want to. It's who wants to play that one? But on the Commodore 64 version, your car stops, but then you see you and your girlfriend, and your girlfriend's like really excited, really impressed with it, and she gives you a kiss. So this is really the only one that actually has any endings. Actually has an ending, so that's much more like the arcade game. Now, of course, this is the fixed route, so the track still goes left and right and so forth, but you start at the second stage, and like I said, the graphics aren't impressive, but they're functional. And of course, this version does have the lights and the beeps at the start. So the way the car handles is different to the arcade game. As you've noticed, it goes full lock. Sound-wise, the music is pretty good actually. Pretty much on par with the Spectrum one. It's a very good rendition of the we've got two very good renditions of Splash Wave and Magical Sound Shower, and unlike the Spectrum and Amstrad ones, this one, because it's a single loader, you get to choose which bit of music you wanted to hear throughout the entire game. Whereas the other one, it alternates. Whereas on the Spectrum one, it alternates between the two tracks. Now, of course, US Gold did actually supply music cassettes with the original releases of their home conversions, and it was a great music tape. Because I actually had to tell you the truth, this is the Commodore 64 version was the only version that I played up until about '97 when I played the Mega Drive one, and we had it on disc, and we had the tape with tape come with ours, and I remember I used to love this. I used to listen to the tape all the time I was playing this. It was a great cassette. I've actually uploaded a separate video of me playing this version with the tape, and it was great. Great fun. Right, it's come up to the end of the video now, so I think it's about time I had to pick a winner. It's a choice. I mean, to be fair, the Commodore 64 is not very accurate to the arcade game, but the Spectrum one is. But like I said, it really struggled with it. So I'm going to, and the Amstrad version was just crap. So so it's a case of you go for the one that's less accurate to the arcade game, but is a lot more fun, or you can go for one that's more accurate to the arcade game, but not as fun to play. And to be fair, guys, gameplay is king. If the game's not fun to play, it's not a good game at all. So in this case, I'm going to pick winner. It's the Commodore 64. Thank you very much for watching, guys.